Whoa, let's make sure I'm recording here. Sweet. Welcome back, everyone, for an exhilarating Biochem 2 video. I know you guys are waiting on this all week to see these videos. I personally love talking about Biochem 2. I don't know if you guys like hearing me talk about Biochem 2, but any chance just to get excited about glycolysis, man, I'm going to take any opportunity that I can get. So, this video, hold on, let me get a sip of coffee real quick. In this video, what we're going to be covering is the aerobic state of glycolysis. So if you guys remember from last week, we covered the anaerobic state, how we go from glucose to G6P, all the way to the end stage in lactate. We had a couple fun little sub pathways there. We had a couple fun little tricks. If we remember in the first stage, we were down 2 ATP, and then in the second stage, everything doubles. And so in total, we made 4 ATP, but realistically, overall, we only made 2 ATP. We talked about the pentose shunt slash glucose phosphate, phosphogluconate pathway. We talked about 2,3 biphosphoglycerate when we don't have a lot of oxygen available. So people from Colorado, that's probably going to be going on inside their body. But over here in Missouri, I don't know. I really don't know our elevation count. So what we're going to be covering today is, again, aerobic process. We're going to be going through the PDH system. We're going to be talking about the TCA cycle. We're going to be talking about the Glycerol P shuttle or glycerol phosphate shuttle. But before we get into all that, we're just going to do a quick recap of what we covered last week with glycolysis. I'm going to make a very simplified form. Going to make sure it's all fresh in your guys' heads because glycolysis will not go away at all this trimester. Everything will be based around glycolysis. So I made a video just a second ago and someone texted me and I realized, well, I can't post anything on YouTube if someone's number is exposed. So I had to restart and here we are. So for anaerobic state of glycolysis, again, we start off with glucose. It goes to G6P, F6P, F1, 6 biphospho something. And then if we remember, G3P, and then DHAP down here, and then shoot all the way down here through some reactions, and we end with lactate. But some of the main things we need to cover, again, just to make sure we're all on the same page, is the shunt pathway right here, which it has numerous names, but the shunt pathway, remember, we have 3 G6P that comes down. We pump off some byproducts of NADPH, drop off some CO2. We produce some ribulose 5P. And then from here, we have 3 ribulose 5Ps, and then we make 2 F6Ps. We make 1 G3P, and that's kind of how that shunt pathway goes right there. And what I want you guys to kind of understand, and I don't think I covered this in the last video, ribulose, it's a pentose. We use it to make RNA. And when we go through the pentose slash shunt pathway, we're really trying to make NADPHs because they are used to build larger molecules down the line, but they are not a part of our redox reactions. If we remember redox reactions, NADH, and we have FADH, and if we remember when they combine with half of an O2, produce H2O right here, and we produce 2.5 ATP per NADPH, and then down here, if we do it this way, half O2, H2O, we only produce 1.5 ATP for an FADH redox reaction. So with that in mind, just with a brief understanding of redox reactions, we're going to see it a lot in the TCA cycle that we're going to cover. But going back to my original thought, we produce NADPH, CO2, ribulose 5P, and with ribulose 5P being a pentose, the main goal of the shunt pathway is to turn pentoses into hexoses and trioses. So I know that is kind of a common question. I remember seeing it once or twice, and again, everything I'm talking about in this video about questions you might see, again, it's all historically speaking, what tutors before me have seen in the past, what I've seen going through Biochem 2, And honestly, you guys might see some different stuff, but I'm hoping I can get you guys comfortable with a lot of the concepts that we're going to cover today so you can reason through any questions that get thrown at you. So again, shunt pathway right there. And if you guys remember over here, to get this process started in the second stage of glycolysis, we needed NAD plus, goes and reacts with G3P, produces an NADH. And then if you guys remember down here from, forgot to write it in here, but pyruvate going to lactate, if we remember, NADH pops up again, reduces pyruvate, NADH gets oxidized, and we produce NAD plus. And that NAD will come back and resupply at the beginning of the second stage, and it's just a nice little cycle for our anaerobic state. And then last recap, if you remember, G3P right here comes up, goes down, goes like that. For our separate pathway for 2,3 biphosphoglycerate, and that again is our little just subhighway for when we have low oxygen content. Again, just to fill in these ATP counts, -1 right there. Hope you guys remember PFK is the enzyme right here, and we have hexokinase right here. And then over here, through a couple reactions, we produce +1 ATP, +1 ATP. And then if you guys remember, everything in the second stage happens twice. So again, net total of 4 right there, -2 right there. And then combine those together, and we just get a total of plus net 2 for our normal anaerobic state of glycolysis. And again, anyone watching not going to our school, understand that I am not an expert in this. I took the class. Apparently, I think I was qualified enough to tutor it, and some days I second guess myself, but you know what? We're just going to go for it. So, again, quick recap right here, anaerobic state. So now we're going to move into an aerobic state, and you guys can follow along on the little note sheet, and actually I might go walk through that real quick before we get any deeper into this. So again, pentose phosphate pathway right here, come down. This stuff right here, I personally have not seen too many questions pertaining to this, but what I did is I went down, memorized the TCA cycle, memorized the pyruvate dehydrogenase system, memorized the glycerol phosphate shuttle, and once I was comfortable with all of those, I came back up here just for some extra information because, again, you never know what questions you're going to get. So, without further ado, we're going to jump down here. We're going to skip past the TCA cycle just for a hot second because the PDH system actually connects glycolysis to the TCA cycle. So, big thing I want you guys to see right here, in the presence of oxygen, pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA instead of lactate. So if we were to jump back to that little diagram I wrote, instead of having that NADH come in and react and reduce that pyruvate into lactate, instead we are going to stop at pyruvate and go through the pyruvate dehydrogenase system. So if we look right here, just on this little diagram right here, we notice we have pyruvate in the starting stage. This pyruvate carboxylase stuff, we'll worry about that at a later time. But what we need to know is pyruvate is acted on by the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. And if we look right here, we have a CoA and an NAD come in and react alongside with pyruvate dehydrogenase. And what I want you guys to know about CoA is actually, I believe, B vitamin 5 or pantothenate. And if we jump back up here to our little B vitamin walkthrough, we can see that pantothenate right here is also referred to as coenzyme A or CoAsh. And it produces metabolites ending in CoA. So if we jump back down here, we can see that we go from pyruvate right here down to acetyl-CoA. So we have a CoA metabolite right there. So CoA, B vitamin 5, comes in, attaches to pyruvate, going through pyruvate dehydrogenase, and we transform into acetyl-CoA. And then we also have an NAD plus coming in and reacting alongside that. And our products that we produce are NADH and CO2 alongside with acetyl-CoA. So going back to when I just briefly talked about redox reactions, when I was writing out just the overview of glycolysis, what I want you guys to know is this NADH right here is going to cycle back again and transform back into NADH. So basically what's going to happen is this NADH right here is going to swing back and turn back in, but it's a redox reaction. So what's going to happen is we are going to have an O, half an O2, boop, half an O2, come in, combine with NADH, we're going to produce some H2O, and we're also going to get a byproduct of NADH, but we're also going to make 2.5 ATP. Look at that. Some more ATP to add to our ATP counts, and then you guys are like, well, it doesn't only produce 2.5 ATP because obviously you have the doubling concept down to the second stage, and this occurs in the second stage. So in total, we make 5 ATP because everything in the second stage doubles. Cool, cool, cool. So now that that little system is understood, I'm going to erase that. What we are going to do is just look at some of the stuff that can inhibit pyruvate dehydrogenase, because it's kind of similar to an allosteric enzyme. Honestly, it might even be an allosteric enzyme. Half the time I don't even know what allosteric means, but what we need to see right here, CO2 and NADH are byproducts of the pyruvate dehydrogenase system. We know that, just covered that, but overproduction of NADH and acetyl-CoA will inhibit the PDH system via activation of the enzyme PDH kinase. So what we need to know is an overabundance of NADH and acetyl-CoA will activate PDH kinase, and kinase will come back and inhibit this enzyme right here, kind of shutting down the highway a little bit. So again, just kind of restating what I just said, we can see that pyruvate dehydrogenase right here inhibited by acetyl-CoA, NADH, and PDH kinase. And then if we want to activate it, and let's say we shut it off, we made too much stuff and we need to turn it back on. We use PDH phosphatase to come back and turn back on this enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase to keep the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl-CoA going. Furthermore, thiamine is another important role in the PDH system. Right now, this diagram right here, I do not remember looking at it too much. And again, go and look for problems that might involve some of these inner functions right here. I just don't remember looking at it too much. But that doesn't mean you won't see it on an exam. It's just right now I'm just not going to go into it because I might mess it up, and some more experienced tutors, and again, I want you guys to see as many tutors as you can because I'm just one perspective. There are so many other people out there that also are very knowledgeable on biochemistry as well and might be able to explain that concept a little bit better. But what I think we just need to know right now is PDH is halted by a thiamine deficiency as well, and it's seen in alcoholics. So the student body at our school, might not have a very operable PDH system because we may need to drown our sorrows after the high intensity of exams, especially in trimester 3. And again, right here, each cycle the PDH system generates 2.5 ATP from the reduction of NAD to NADH, and we just talked about that with that little redox reaction I drew. Yeah, and then B vitamin right here, B1, thiamine, CoAsh, that's where we get that CoA right there. And then we also got FADH and NAD. And again, if you guys remember from Biochem 1, the B vitamin that goes with FAD is riboflavin, and then the B vitamin B3 that goes with NAD is called niacin. And again, right here, cofactors are not used up, but instead they're recycled, making sure I do not miss a point. And again, these enzymes right here, I'd say go and look for these problems, see how much they are referenced over the course. And again, the main one I've seen is pyruvate dehydrogenase. I've not seen too much about these right here, but again, you never know what's going to happen. So let's go make a little new highway on our drawings. So let's go aerobic glycolysis. So I'm just going to make a very simplified version of this just to save some time. We're going to start with glucose, and then G6P, and then we're going to flash down here, and this is just going to be a little divider. First stage, second stage, of course we have G3P, and then we're just going to flash down to pyruvate. And again, remember, I'm going to make another little divider here. We only go to lactate if we're in an anaerobic state. As soon as we talk about an aerobic state, we are immediately thinking about stopping at pyruvate and going through the PDH system and then eventually into the TCA cycle. But what we need to talk about here, I always like to draw double arrows just to represent that. We do a lot of this stuff twice. So let's incorporate the PDH system into this little diagram. So pyruvate's going to come down here and turn into acetyl CoA. Look at that. And then if we remember from just a second ago, we have CoAsh, we have NAD plus, then we get rid of a CO2 and an NADH. That NADH goes through redox reaction, pumps out 2.5 ATP, and in total right here, now we are plus 5 ATP. Right here, just because of the PDH system. PDH. And if you guys remember, I'm just going to put just abbreviated pyruvate dehydrogenase acts on there. And if we remember, high levels of NADH or high levels of acetyl CoA are going to activate PDH kinase, and that PDH kinase is going to be a negative modulator for pyruvate dehydrogenase right there. And then if we want to turn it back on, we are going to have PDH phosphatase, and that is going to turn it back on, and that is going to be a positive modulator of pyruvate dehydrogenase. So look at that. Brand new pathway, aerobic state, already plus 5 ATP on the count. So now you guys, I know you guys have been waiting for the TCA cycle because it is awesome. And basically what I'm going to do here is we're just going to do a quick flashback up here. And the diagram I like to use personally is this right here. Now, what I want you guys to pay attention to is acetyl CoA is not the starting point of the TCA cycle. It's basically waiting on the edge. And actually, I forgot one fun fact. I apologize for doing all this jumping around, but I'm going to make some squigglies right here and right here. And this PDH system, what I want you guys to know is this system is operating in the mitochondrial membrane. Because most of our redox reactions and anytime we're in an aerobic process, for the most part, is going to be operating in either the mitochondrial membrane or the actual mitochondrial matrix. But this PDH system is basically a connection from glycolysis through the mitochondrial membrane, and eventually we will enter the mitochondrial matrix, as you'll see. And I'll just make this little arrow right here because we're about to learn where that acetyl CoA goes, and we'll finish our drawing after that. So if we look right here, this is the TCA cycle. And what I want you guys to see, look, acetyl CoA is right there, and we have this little product called oxaloacetate. So what's going to happen is oxaloacetate is going to bind with acetyl CoA, and we're going to transform into citrate through the enzyme citrate synthase. As soon as acetyl CoA combines with oxaloacetate, that's when the TCA cycle begins, and that's when we have entered the mitochondrial matrix. And all of these enzymes and all these products, I'm going to leave that up to you guys to memorize, because if I just say them right now, it's not going to stick. So I'm just going to do overarching concepts more than anything. What I'm going to do is talk about some fun stuff. So up in this little corner, I want you guys to see, we have 4 reducing agents, we have 2 CO2 produced and we have 2 O2 used. So if we flash around here and also look right here, 10 ATP generated per go around of the TCA cycle. So what's going to happen is acetyl-CoA going to come in, combine with oxaloacetate through the action of citrate synthase and turn into citrate. Citrate is going to go around here, and if you guys look right here, we have a little redox reaction. Oh, would you look at that? NAD and NADH. And what's that going to do? Produce 2.5 ATP. Boom. That's number one of our redox agents right there. Then flash down here, lose a CO2 right there, keep track. That's our first CO2. And then transform into alpha ketoglutarate. And we can see right here, alpha ketoglutarate is eventually going to turn into succinyl-CoA. And where do we get that CoA from? Oh, would you look at that? A CoAsh or B vitamin 5 is going to come in, combine with alpha ketoglutarate, and it's going to transform into succinyl-CoA. And we are going to produce another CO2. So that's number 2 for our CO2s. And then would you look right here? We have NAD and NADH again. And we are going to produce, again, another 2.5 ATP. So right here is our second redox reaction. And then what I want you guys to pay attention to right here is succinyl-CoA going to succinate. We produce a CoAsh. We get rid of that B vitamin. And then we also just produce a singular ATP right here. And keep that in mind because we have 4 redox reactions going on that are producing ATP for us, but we also have this random ATP popping out right there. And then we get up here going from succinate to fumarate, and would you look at that? FADH to FAD. And that produces 1.5 ATP. So that's our third redox reaction. And then go through a couple more reactions, pop up here, malate to oxaloacetate through malate dehydrogenase. And again, we produce another 2.5 ATP, and that's our fourth redox reaction. And I'll go through the breakdown in a second on the other page. But if you guys look right here, we have 4 redox reactions going, and per redox reaction, we use half of an O2. So if we have 4 total redox reactions going on, in total, we are using a total, blah, blah, blah. We have 4 redox reactions, each one using half of an O2. So if we have 4 redox reactions going on, in total, we are using 2 total components of oxygen, and we are also producing 2 components of CO2 just down here in these random steps. So up in that top left corner, that's where we get some of those variables going. And we also get 10 ATP generated from each go around. We get about 9 from these 4 redox reactions, and then we get an additional 1 from ATP right there. All right. Citrate synthase combines acetyl-CoA and oxaloacetate to make citrate. And what I want you guys to see is this enzyme is inhibited by excessive citrate production. So if we have too much citrate being produced and it's not being used through the TCA cycle, it's going to come back and say, hey, citrate synthase, shut off. We don't need you right now. And it's going to shut it off. And then ATP is produced, covers that. Coenzyme A acts as a fuel cell. And then right here, I want you guys to know that the TCA cycle is happening inside the mitochondrial matrix. And I just want to make sure I cover all my bases here. Reduction of oxygen by 3 NADH and 1 FADH2. FADH2, I'd say I might have been mispronouncing that. If it's FADH2, refer to it as that. And then we also have a substrate level phosphorylation, where from succinyl-CoA going to succinate, and that's just referencing this little ATP process right here. So now that we have a decent understanding of that, let's just go add it to our little diagram. So we're right here, and I'm just going to make an over abbreviated version, or not over abbreviated, under abbreviated. It's going to be simplified. So oxaloacetate is going to come, and acetyl-CoA is going to combine with that, make citrate, and then boom, it's just going to go around in a full circle, come back to oxaloacetate, restart the cycle all over again. And per one cycle, we are producing 10 ATP. But if we remember, everything that happens in the second stage, it's going to happen twice. So in total, per one molecule of glucose, in total, we are going to actually be making 20 ATP. And again, if we want the breakdown, we have NADH as a redox, pumping out 2.5 ATP, happens 3 times, 1 times the FADH2, pumping out 1.5, and then we just have that extra ATP floating around between succinyl-CoA and succinyl, I don't know. So that's just +1. And let me just make sure my math is right here because I do not want to mess you guys up here. 2.5 times 3 plus 1.5 plus 1. Perfect, 10. And then again, per 1 cycle, consuming 2 molecules of oxygen, producing 2 molecules of CO2. And since this is all just 1 cycle, since we go through it twice, just multiply everything by 2 here. And that's kind of how you get. So in total, 4 molecules of O2, 4 molecules of CO2. You guys can do the math on the upper portion, but that's kind of how everything just incorporates into the TCA cycle. And if I were to draw another fun squiggly line, right here and right here. Again, this is happening inside of the mitochondrial matrix. Would you look at that? Now we have 2 more processes going on. We have some newer ATP counts right here. So far we produced 25 extra ATP between the PDH cycle and the TCA cycle. And again, please go back, memorize the TCA cycle, memorize glycolysis, memorize the PDH system, because especially for the first exam, he can plop you down anywhere within these systems. But we have one more component. We are missing the glycerol phosphate shuttle. And it's actually pretty cool. So I'm just going to make an extra little focused version down here. So this little dotted line is represent our crossover into the second stage. And if we remember, we have G3P right here. And we come down here to pyruvate and then to lactate. And you'll see why I'm including lactate in this. Because if we remember just from a normal anaerobic state, that NAD plus right here that came through, or NADH, sorry, NADH came through, produced that NAD plus that originally came back all the way here to kick off the second stage of glycolysis again. In an aerobic state, we stop right here. So that reduction of pyruvate to lactate doesn't occur. So how are we going to get NADH back to initiate that G3P initiation to go down the second stage of glycolysis? Well, this is where the glycerol phosphate shuttle comes into play. So if we jump back to the sheet, pop back down over here, the glycerol phosphate shuttle. And if you guys look right here, this is kind of in an anaerobic state when NADH comes up here, combines with NAD plus. That NAD plus will come back here and kick off the system again. But in the presence of an aerobic state, this NADH is actually not going to be able to go through this process, and it's going to come down here through the glycerol phosphate shuttle. So what's basically going to happen is NADH is going to come through here, and look at that, DHAP. I know you guys were worrying about that on your last quiz. I know there's a question on that, so it comes back to haunt you a little bit. DHAP, what it's going to do is it's going to react with NADH here. It's going to get reduced and pick up a hydrogen from that NADH. And then it's going to turn into Glycerol P. Glycerol P is going to come down here and react with FAD+. And then that is going to produce FADH2. And then look at that, another redox reaction, and we are producing 1.5 ATP through that redox reaction. And then just a little side note over here, cytoplasmic NADH is oxidized to NAD by this aerobic method. And then additionally, this only occurs in skeletal muscle under aerobic conditions. That is a huge deal. And again, location is very major for a lot of this stuff. So look at this, get comfortable with a lot of the processes right here, and I'm just going to add it to our little diagram over here. So NADH is going to come through here, and we're going to have, oh my goodness, I think I forgot the starting point again. I know we're going to have NAD plus right here. Ooh, one of my AirPods died. I hope you guys can still hear me. I think, hopefully the sound doesn't cut out. If it does, I'll just put out a second video. But what we can see right here is NADH comes up here, reacts with GCP or G3P, produces NADH, but we're going to need that NADH to come back. So what's going to happen is, NADH, and I kind of messed up this line right here. NADH is going to come through. This is going to do a nice little cycle right here. This is going to come up in here. We're going to have DHAP come here, react with that, turn in, we're just going to Glycerol P. Glycerol P is going to react with FAD+, going to pick up the hydrogen from there, turn into FADH2. FADH2 is going to come down here, and we're going to react with 1/2 of an O2. That half of an O2 is going to take a hydrogen off that FADH right there, produce H2O, and as a result, we're going to be producing 1.5 ATP. But what we can't forget is this, again, is in the second stage. So in total, we are producing +3 ATP per 1 molecule of glucose. And since my AirPods died, and I don't know if you guys can hear me, I'm just going to speed up this whole process for a second and just do a quick overview. So for aerobic glycolysis, glucose, G6P, flashes into the second stage, produces G3P. G3P is going to come to pyruvate. Pyruvate is going to be like, hey, there's oxygen involved, we need to do some redox reactions, so we are going to go through the PDH system, or the pyruvate dehydrogenase system. We're going to add CoAsh, NAD+, to pyruvate dehydrogenase. As a result, we are going to get CO2 and NADH. Right here, that NADH is going to come up here, and again, down here, react with 1/2 of an O2, going to produce H2O, and per 1 molecule of glucose, we're going to produce 5 ATP. So right here, +5 at the PDH system. Acetyl-CoA, being one of our products, is going to come down here, combine with oxaloacetate, turn into citrate through citrate synthase. Citrate is going to come around and just go through all those different reactions in the TCA cycle. And per 1 rotation, we get 10 ATP. Per 2 rotations, we get 20 ATP, and we get the 2 rotations when we get 1 molecule of glucose. And again, PDH system, mitochondrial membrane, TCA cycle in the mitochondrial matrix. And then to cover the glycerol phosphate shuttle, which, again, don't mean to be sloppy, but it kind of occurs in here, or you can wrap it around under. It's just a little crowded right there. NADH that is not being used to reduce pyruvate is going to come through here, react with DHAP. DHAP is going to turn into Glycerol P. Glycerol P is going to react with FAD, turn into FADH right here. FADH is going to come down through here, react with 1/2 of an oxygen, produce 1.5 ATP. Technically, it's 3 ATPs since we do everything twice. And apologize if it feels a little rushed. But again, these videos are just meant for very basic overviews. The finer details I'm leaving on you guys, because you guys have your own ways of studying and know how to memorize it. But this is for aerobic glycolysis. As far as we need to know at this point, we need to know the PDH system, TCA cycle, and the glycerol phosphate shuttle, and how they all kind of work together. And again, make sure to be able to separate anaerobic from aerobic. And I wish you guys the best of luck studying for this. You guys are going to do great. You guys are academic weapons. And honestly, I find this fun. And once you get to understand it, I hope you guys find it fun as well. But again, thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys have a great day. Ryan Kovacic signing off.